Right. Welcome to the Chris Gethin show, Chris Gethin podcast, I should say. Now, I got a phenomenal guest who has been on this show before. It was about 4 years ago.
4 years, right?
Time has gone. Dr. Darshan Shah, thank you ever so much for, number one, being on the show and having us in your beautiful beach house here. It's been phenomenal.
My pleasure.
My hair's grown back. My hair's grown back since I've been here.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been phenomenal.
Great. Good to have you.
Thank you very much, sir. So, I've made the introduction at the beginning of this podcast, but since I spoke to you last, which is about 4 years ago, what's been happening since? Like, I know that you're in the UAE recently, you're expanding Next Health. I'm sure you're very, very busy. Can you get us just caught up a little bit?
Absolutely. Over the last few years, when you first asked me to be on your podcast, I think we only had 2 locations for Next Health.
That's right, yeah.
And Next Health, for those of you who don't know, is a bio optimization clinic. We call it a longevity center, and we also call it health optimization. So we do both health optimization and longevity. And that whole concept has kind of evolved over the last few years. There's so much new technology coming out now, and just a lot more people are talking about longevity and turning back your biological clock. So that has led to an explosion of people seeking out the services at Next Health, the things that we do at Next Health. And so we've been blessed to be able to expand to New York, also to Hawaii in partnership with the Four Seasons. And then now, as you saw, we're in Dubai in a couple of locations. And we decided to move to a more franchise model so we can offer the things that we do on a more global scale. So we have about 30 to 40 new franchises opening up over the next few years as well. So we'll have Next Health centers in many countries throughout the world: India, Canada, Australia, and also all over the United States.
Wow, that's going to keep you busy.
Very busy.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, for sure. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So can you tell us just a little bit on, I've obviously been to your centers. I've participated in the modalities that you have there. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you offer there?
Yeah, so, it all starts with really knowing what's going on under the hood of your biology, right? I think a lot of people, they think they're healthy. They're going to the gym every day. They're eating well according to what the latest dietitian has told them to eat, and they're getting good sleep. I think a lot of people now know about sleep, but those are only, in my view, the basics. There's so much more that you need to know about what's going on under the hood of your biology. Things like what we were talking about: inflammation, your hormone issues that might be happening, and not just sex hormones, not just testosterone, estrogen, but thyroid, etc. And then even deeper things. Now we know some of the root causes of aging at a biological cellular level, such as mitochondrial disease, telomeres, etc. So what we do is you first start off getting a full battery of tests, including a full body MRI, a CAT scan of your heart, and over 1,000 different biomarkers that we take from your blood, and genetic testing. And then we come up with a plan to, number one, optimize your health from just a habits and routine standpoint. So your sleep, your diet, and your exercise routines. But that's the basics. Then we take it on to a functional medicine level where we work on detoxifying your system, your hormone balances. We work on your inflammation levels, your gut health. And then once we have all that in order, we have at Next Health the latest in longevity technology, things like total plasma exchange, therapeutic plasma exchange, stem cells, exosomes, and we can create a program for you that you can utilize what's going to help you turn back your biological clock.
Wow, interesting. And, as part of this medical process, when people come, do you look at, obviously their histories? So for instance, if that person does have metal amalgams, you're like, okay, we're not going to give you an IV of glutathione and stuff like that. So it is completely customized. Because I find, you see now a lot of these like biohacking clinics have popped up, and they don't really do like a medical background other than like a quick telemed check to say, okay, you're in good health, great, here's an IV.
Yeah, I think, because of kind of the explosion of people looking for these type of services and the longevity, the talk around longevity, people are looking like, where do I go get this stuff done? And we were one of the first here in Los Angeles to do all these things, but because I'm a physician, I have an MD degree, and we're regulated by the medical boards in the societies, we always want to make sure that we're customizing. Really, a patient should not be able to just say, guess about what treatment is going to work for them. It's really about understanding what's going on in their biology and talking to them and figuring out with their history, with the physical, with biomarkers, what's going to work the best for that individual person.
Right, got it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I've noticed I follow you on the socials, obviously. And I noticed that you're putting a little bit more content out there in regards to obviously our physical well-being, activity, making sure that it isn't just the shiny objects and the biohacks. We have to actually put in the hard work. Now, a lot of my audience here come from an athletic background. However, we do know that we're going through a lot of inflammation. A lot of us are very dopamine driven and generally overtrained, maybe under-recovered sleep. What do you feel is the perfect balance? So let's say, here's a scenario. We've got an individual that's training like 6 days a week. Most athletes are. Maybe they're lacking in sleep, they've got family, but they're eating like 6, 7 meals a day. Now we know that's triggering mTOR. We have this inflammation. What can they do to possibly balance it out? Should they fast every now and again, maybe on a non-training day, or should they pull back their training so it's like 4 days a week? Do you have a balance there that you can kind of spread a sheet over?
Yeah, it's all about balance, as you said, and the balance becomes more and more important as we age, okay? So as you spoke about mTOR, this is causing us to either grow or is causing us to recuperate and repair, right? And so as we age, the need to grow decreases from just an evolutionary perspective, and we need more recovery time as we grow. So I use a lot of different modalities for this type of thing. Number one, let's talk about diet first, right? So in diet, you mentioned fasting. I think fasting works really well, but you do need a longer term fast to really activate the mechanisms of senescent clearing. So just an intermittent fast, probably not going to have as much senescent cell clearing as a longer term fast. So what I try to get a lot of my athlete patients to do, we have a lot of athletes that come to us in Next Health, is do a 3 to 5 day fast on a quarterly basis to really clear those senescent cells. And then, we talked a little bit earlier about some supplements that can also help clear senescent cells. Secondly, on an exercise basis. So I like to use HRV as one of the biomarkers of recovery. And, it's not completely accurate for everybody. I always say go by how you feel internally. But if you don't really know, am I recovered enough to really put in a hard day? I like to use HRV to really kind of modify what you're doing that day for your workout routine. You mentioned people training 6 or 7 days a week, and I know many athletes love to do that. But really, as you get to 45, 50, cutting back on that routine of exercising every single day and putting your body through that much is I think is also important. Now, if you have access to a place such as Next Health or any place that offers some of these modalities like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, I think is very important for recovery. In addition to cryo, any form of cryo, whether it's a cryotherapy machine or a cold plunge, all those things help. And adding sauna to your daily routine is also very helpful. So those are kind of the basics that you can do. And then, there's higher levels that you can do as well if you have the access to it.
Right, okay. And speaking on the fasting, would that be a pure fast, or are we talking like a bit of a Dr. Voltalongo where it could be fasting mimicking? Because I know there's just going to be a lot of athletes going fast for 3 to 5 days. Can I have some calories? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I really like the Prolon program that Walter Longo has put together. He and I have spoke a few times, and I like it that it's based on a lot of deep science as well. So that's a great program for people that are scared of doing like a full just water fast. Of course, you need to do water. Don't eliminate the hydration. But what I found is Walter's program, the Prolon program, is great for many people. Some people don't really need it. They do it the first couple of times, and then they can do a water fast, and their body adapts, and after a day they're not hungry and they're feeling actually pretty good. So I would say try it.
Okay, got it. All right. Now, I got this question from my wife here. She wanted me to ask you, what do you feel that people regret not doing earlier, when it comes to their longevity and their health span? Maybe they get to 50, 60 or some sort of health complication and go, man, I really wish I started doing that at a younger age.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic question. I deal with this. This is the number one question I get from a lot of the people that come to see us. Sometimes they come in, they're like, I've never even seen a doctor in like 5, 6 years. Like, what am I missing here? And really, I like to frame it like this. There's 4 things that are likely going to kill you, right? And we know this from epidemiological studies done by the CDC that most men and women are either going to die of a heart attack, which is by far the number one cause of why why people die, some sort of cerebrovascular disease, right? Something that's either a stroke or a heart attack, something going on in their blood vessels. Number 2 is going to be cancer. Number 3 is going to be some sort of metabolic disease like diabetes, or there's a whole spectrum of metabolic disease, right? And so if you're not watching out for those things at an earlier age, all these diseases start 30 to 40 years before you get symptoms from it. And most people don't seek care for this until they have symptoms, but you need to know much, much earlier. So if you're headed in that direction, you can turn back the cause of this, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we talk about. So we can dive in individually into each one of those things if you'd like, but I think that these 4 diseases are things that we need to be looking for, screening for as early as their 30s, I would say. When you hit 30s, when you want to really start looking and seeing if you have risk for any of this.
Right, okay, start looking under the hood then.
Right.
And, you mentioned about cancer and heart disease, and I know that there are indicators that you test for,
Yes.
so people can get an understanding, maybe that's part of their genome, or there's something within them that could possibly trigger it in the future. So how do you test for that?
Absolutely. Okay, so the number one thing I want to encourage your audience to do is become the CEO of their own health, right? And the way I like to talk about being the CEO is when you're running a business, you are blind unless you're looking at the numbers, right? And so you have to educate yourself. Every person, don't outsource this to your doctor. Educate yourself on the biomarkers that are important. There's really about only 8 to 10 biomarkers that are important for every human to really know. So if we talk about heart disease, for example, you want to know what your ApoB level is, right? And so ApoB is a sum total of all your bad cholesterol and making sure that you have this very well controlled from a young age. And a lot of people, 20% of people have a form of bad cholesterol called LP little a. Okay, so this is a protein marker for a genetic form of high cholesterol that even any form of diet, exercise is not going to be able to manage. You need to get under some sort of medical therapeutic to manage this. So ApoB is one of those things for heart disease. Now, there's a new test called the Clearly CAT scan of your heart. It's an AI-driven CAT scan of all the blood vessels of your heart, that if you've had high levels of ApoB and high levels of inflammation for a while, you really need to get this scan done. It shows us vessel by vessel of your heart how much blockages you have. And depending on the amount of blockage you have, we need to create some sort of therapeutic for you. Now, I'll give you a story. Like my brother, for example, he's 40 years old, and he's a vegan. He exercises every day. His weight is under good control. He sleeps well. And he was going to go on a big hike up a mountain, Kilimanjaro, okay? And I said to him, your ApoB has been kind of high for a little while. You really need to go get a CAT scan of your heart done, the Clearly test done before you go to Kilimanjaro. He did. He found out he had a 90% blockage of one of his blood vessels that needed a stent. And he's in his early 40s, right?
Wow.
And so, I think a lot of people get lulled into a false sense of confidence that I'm exercising, I'm doing everything right that I hear about, I should be fine. And then most people die of a heart attack at their first event. Okay, so it's not like they have chest pain for a while and then they go to the doctor, they get their heart treated. Most people, their first event is a heart attack that kills them, believe it or not. So you don't want to be surprised by that. Secondly, we can talk about metabolic disease. So I think metabolic disease is another thing. You and I were talking about your carb intake and watching your sugar levels. The first sign of diabetes, as people know, is hemoglobin A1C starts to elevate past 6.5. That's when your doctor's going to tell you. But really, it starts way before that when you're developing metabolic disease. So we use things like continuous glucose monitors and insulin levels to check for metabolic disease to begin with as well. And lastly, for cancer. So cancer, people don't know they have cancer until they get symptomatic. Symptomatic cancer happens at stage 3 and stage 4. Stage 3 and stage 4 cancer, you're talking a 5-year survival rate now. They're almost completely not treatable along all forms of cancer. Cancer's biggest enemy is being diagnosed as stage 1, right? And so there's incredible new screening modalities that are out there, things like full body MRI, the Gallery gene test that can diagnose cancers at stage 1. If you diagnose a cancer at stage 1, it's highly treatable for almost all forms of cancer. So these are the kind of tests that we encourage people to do, is really take their testing to the 21st century and do these types of tests instead.
Okay, got it. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there wanting to know, what do you do? Like, what is your routine? to improve your longevity and your health span from the morning that you wake up to the times that you go to bed, what is your routine in regards to your day and your nutrition and your supplementation and exercise?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, over the years I've added a lot of stuff to my routine, but I think
Probably
that,
removed a lot of stuff
and
as well.
removed a
You
lot
wouldn't
of
have the
stuff
time.
too. Exactly. No, you're so right about that. I believe in the Pareto principle. There's 20% of the actions you take that make 80% of the difference in your lifespan. And so really, I think having a morning routine has been incredibly important for me, where I, drink a large container of water with some electrolytes in it. I then move on to doing some journaling. I read for 30 to 40 minutes before I even look at my phone. I do a meditation and a prayer as well. And then after that, it's all about getting outside. So I have a rucksack that I use, and I go up and down the hill to my house. And that's about a 1 hour commute walking with a rucksack. And that, that's been for me one of the biggest things that I've added to my routine, because as you age, you lose that balance and that stability to be able to, go up and down a hill and carrying heavy things. And so just adding more functional exercise to my day-to-day has been key. And I try to make it to the gym every day, but a lot of times I'm traveling like you are, and it's not possible. So if I can't make it to the gym, I'm a big believer in getting 10,000 steps in no matter what during the day, just keeping that physical activity going. I take my first supplements right before lunchtime, and so I kind of stick to the basics. I don't have a huge supplement routine, just because I've never been good at taking supplements. And then I do all these things that I was talking to you about a little bit earlier, which is I do a biomarker test on myself, a simple biomarker test called the baseline every quarter to see what direction my biomarkers are going. And every year I do the scanning. I do the full body MRI, the heart scan, etc.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And then that will dictate what sort of supplements that you should take, or what food or nutritional protocol you should follow based on those markers. So that could change every quarter then.
It could. And it does. A lot of times it does. Yep. Especially, my carbohydrate intake, it changes based on which direction my hemoglobin A1C is going, what my continuous glucose monitor is telling me, etc.
Okay, got it. All right. Now, I know that you're going to be doing a talk a little bit later, and I can't wait to watch it, all on NAD.
Yes.
So, of course, I'm 49 years old now, and I know that after the age of 40, it declines rapidly by about 50%.
Right.
And so I actually got some NAD on me right now.
Yes.
So what can you explain to the listeners here and viewers a little bit about NAD and why it is so important, and should everybody be taking it, or are there certain biomarkers that people should look out for to possibly not take NAD?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to understand where NAD fits into the cycle of our biology, right? So inside of every cell, we have an energy plant called the mitochondria. The mitochondria makes energy in the form of what's called ATP. The precursor to ATP is NAD. So understanding that tells you that every cell in your body needs energy to function. And so without being able to give yourself the precursors to energy, which is nutrition, NAD, oxygen, your cells don't have energy and they can't function and do what they need to do. So what is the benefit of NAD? Well, it's the benefit of every cell in your body being able to do what they need to do, okay? So yes, you're right, NAD levels precipitously decline after the age of 40, and they keep going lower and lower. And that's probably one of the main reasons we age, is the cells in our body don't have the ability to do what they need to do at a high level. And so maintaining good NAD levels is extremely important. So before we had NAD supplementation, people would, exercise like high intensity intermittent training, having all the micronutrient precursors, all of that has been extremely important. But now there's a lot of science showing that exogenous NAD actually does increase intracellular NAD, so your cells have more energy. So should everyone be on NAD? I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that. There's huge studies that need to be done. Just from a medical perspective, having controlled randomized studies with specific outcomes is what we really need to say everyone needs to be on it. However, I always look at risk-benefit ratios, right? And so the benefit to having NAD at optimal levels is very high, and the risk of taking NAD, from what I've seen in the research, is very low. And so I take NAD, and I encourage my patients to take NAD.
And I've had people come up to me that are in their 20s and say, hey, I know that you're taking NAD. Should I be taking it? Now, should people in their 20s start taking it as preventative measures, or should they have some tests, or could we look at their background? Maybe they've had, I don't know, some substance abuse in their past, alcohol abuse or just some sort of abuse, where they feel that they probably they've extracted a lot of that NAD, so they should possibly supplement with it.
Yeah, you just said the key. Like, there's so many different situations that, in your 20s especially, I mean, 20-year-olds are the model of optimal health that we use in all of medical research, right? So if you're looking at a healthy 20-year-old that has not abused their body, that hasn't, done drugs or alcohol for a long period of time, probably not needed to have NAD at that point in time. However, if they have any forms of alcohol abuse or substance abuse, yes, they've definitely depleted NAD. Using NAD is actually a treatment modality for a lot of addicts right now to actually decrease one of the symptoms of addiction, which is low energy, right? And so, secondly, I use NAD for my younger patients that have metabolic disease. So metabolic disease is rampant right now, starting at even adolescence, right? People are seeing the first forms of diabetes develop, and so we use NAD for those people as well. So it's really at an individualized basis at that age, but in general, if you're healthy and you're not overtraining, you're not trying to recover from some sort of abuse from drugs or alcohol, probably not needed, but a lot of people are.
Right, got it. Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of like, when we look at stem cells, for instance, I've had stem cells a couple of occasions. I think it's absolutely awesome. Absolutely love stem cells. And I think to a certain degree, the requirement of it is all dependent on your past history.
Absolutely.
If you've had a lot of injuries, or like you've gone through a lot of inflammation or substance abuse, then maybe the stem cells are needed for that individual a little bit more than the average person.
Right.
But when it comes to stem cells then, how do you dictate if a client should have the stem cells? Is it just based on injuries or inflammation that person's dealing with, or are there other things that you try to cover with stem cell treatments?
Yeah, so the FDA says that we can't say stem cells treat any specific condition, right? And that's because it's true, there aren't large research studies that show that stem cells are effective for any specific condition. But what I can tell you is that utilizing stem cells for people that have had injuries and inflammations has been a game changer in my practice and many physicians' practices. So anecdotally, we can say that injuries do heal faster. We do see inflammation decrease with stem cell therapy. Now, who needs stem cells? We just don't know yet. It's another one of those leap of faiths that the potential benefit is very high for longevity purposes, for decreasing inflammation. However, and the risk is probably pretty low. Like, we don't see a lot of bad things happening when we give people stem cells if the stem cells are processed correctly. So, if you can afford it and it's you're willing to take the leap of faith, more power to you to do it. It's kind of like we said with the NAD. But as physicians, we can't say that it treats any specific condition.
Got it.
And that being said, I do them quarterly myself.
Yeah.
just to put that out there, I myself do stem cells on a quarterly basis.
And do you have them taken like in acute areas where you're going to go through wear and tear, like your knees, or is it more of an IV or both?
Yeah, I'm using it for generalized inflammation management, and so IV. But and I've been blessed not to have injuries in my joints and not need them in my joints. But we have used it for joint injuries on people and with incredible results.
Right, okay. And what about for aesthetic purposes as well? I'm looking at your skin, I'm like, you've got phenomenal skin, you're looking very, very good. And I know you're an expert in this area as well. What, from an aesthetic standpoint, we all want to look good, we want to have great abs, six-pack, of course our heart is the most important muscle, but we want to look after our face as well. No point having a body looking young and aesthetic if we don't have the aesthetics and youthfulness to our face. But I know that it is exposed to the elements a lot more than any other part of our body. So what are your suggestions and the tips that we can take away for an aesthetic, youthful looking face?
Yeah, keeping your face looking youthful. So there's a few things that you can do. And I think, it's all individualized once again. We actually do a scan of people's faces so we can see how much UV damage they have. We can quantify their wrinkles, we can quantify their red spots, etc. But in general, I would say, we know that collagen levels decrease over time as we age. So really boosting your collagen consumption is a really good idea. So I, supplement with collagen on a daily basis, 10 grams of collagen. The other thing that I recommend for a lot of our patients is, if you haven't looked into things like Botox and fillers, they're helpful, especially if you're having areas of increased wrinklings, and that's individualized completely for people as well. And then hair as well, looking at the amount of hair you have and how your hair is thinning, especially it's for men and women, but a lot of men have men pattern baldness that really makes them look a lot older than they are. And so we do a lot of hair treatments as well, such as PRP to the scalp, and we even refer people for hair transplantation surgery. So just kind of having an overall look at the face and not being scared of some of the newer modalities that are coming out there that a lot of plastic surgeons provide is helpful. And then, of course, like you said, you're exposed to the elements. The more you can decrease the amount that your face is exposed to UV light is also going to be helpful for most people.
Right. Okay. Got it. And staying hydrated as well. It's got to be
yes,
a big thing as well.
absolutely.
Like I notice, like whenever I go and visit my family in the UK, and it's just the culture. Nobody drinks water. It's tea and coffee, and if you're in a cafe, no one's bringing water to you. That's for sure.
I know.
So hydration is a big part of it for sure as well.
Great
and
point.
the one thing that I want to touch on as well that is very important to our overall health, and we know that we have more gut bacteria than DNA itself, and can help with a lot of hormone optimization, is the gut microbiome. And we know there's a lot of issues going on, leaky gut, gut dysbiosis, etc., not as much opportunist flora as we should have. What can we do to optimize our gut health, which can, correct me if I'm wrong, lead to other issues, could lead to a possible chemical imbalance in the brain if you don't have the right gut microbiome optimized for hormonal health?
Yeah, I mean, there's more serotonin produced in your gut than in your brain, and so by a factor of like 20. So the gut-brain connection is real, and it's becoming more and more scientifically validated that when you are having issues in your brain, such as brain fog, even Alzheimer's disease, cognitive impairment, attention deficit, a lot of those things actually start in the gut. So that's just one example why the gut is important. The other example is inflammation, as you mentioned. We know that inflammation is the root cause of all disease. Well, most inflammation begins in your gut and in your mouth. So making sure your oral hygiene is good and your gut is treated well is extremely important. And so how do you maintain a good, healthy flora in your gut? Well, the number one thing you can do is eliminate processed food from your diet. So processed food is like a nuclear bomb to your gut. And so keeping that at an absolute minimum, eating as much whole foods as you can, and sourcing your food well, organically sourced, pasture raised, ocean caught fish, etc. You want all of that to be like really on point. And then most people don't get enough fiber in their diets as well. So the gut bacteria depend on fiber, both insoluble and soluble fiber. And so getting at least 40 grams, if not, a little bit more than that on a daily basis is extremely, extremely valuable. And then a lot of people ask the question, like, should I be taking probiotics? And so, if you're doing all those things right and you don't have a lot of gut symptoms, then probably don't need probiotics. I take probiotics on a daily basis just because it's hard to get that right every day. So.
Yeah, for sure. And what about, while we're on the subject of supplementation from probiotics, of course you can take some sort of fermented foods or sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, etc.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people out there cannot consume the amount of vegetables. We always say, eat the rainbow, or Mark Hyman always says, eat the rainbow on your plate. What about greens powders? Can that replace all the vegetables that people usually can't consume?
So when I talk about vegetables to people, I tell them, 500 to 800 grams a day. That's like 2 large salads of vegetables a day. I aim for that, but it's almost always impossible to get that many vegetables in per day. And with vegetables, you're getting a lot of different things from vegetables. You're getting the phytonutrients, the micronutrients, and you're getting the fibers as well. So powders like AG1 or some of these green powders, I really like them. Instead of taking a micronutrient tablet like a multivitamin, I use a powder in my morning water as well. And I think it's a great way to get your micronutrients in, your phytonutrients in. You still need to add fiber if you're going the powder route.
Okay, got it. Speaking of a morning cocktail, so tell me, is it okay to mix all these things together, or should they be separated? If we're having like greens, we're having some lemon juice, maybe a little bit of apple cider vinegar, we're having some ionic minerals added to it as well, and possibly some creatine, maybe some essential amino acids. Can that be all mixed together? It may not taste the best, but the AG1 actually tastes pretty good in there. It destroys a lot of the horrible taste in there. Yeah, it's quite nice. So if you mix those all together, is that okay, or would they somehow counteract against each other?
I think it's fine to mix it all together. I think, when we eat things in general on a plate of food, like you're mixing a lot of different things together when you're eating proteins and vegetables and all this. So I think it's fine. I don't know the answer fully unless you show me exactly what you're mixing together, and then I'd have to probably do some research, but I mix a lot of this stuff together. There's a new powder out there called Momentous. Have you heard of this powder?
No, I haven't.
It has like everything in it. It has mushrooms and it has NAD and it has like all the things you just talked about. And so, and I know they've done a lot of research, so I do like that. That's what I've been using lately.
Momentous.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. I'll check that out. Right. Okay, and one other thing, because I know you've got your seminar you've got to get ready for here very, very shortly, is now we know the environment is very, very different to what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. People are getting diagnosed at a much earlier age with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, etc. And we know we're getting penetrated by non-native EMFs. We're up later being exposed to artificial light. And then we have the phthalates that we're putting on our skin, the plastics, the microwaves, blah, blah, blah. I could go on. Now, we could become obsessed with trying to completely control this environment. And I, try to mitigate myself from a lot of the EMFs. I'll have the phone case, the fanny pack. It isn't because I'm a bodybuilder. It is a defender shield,
Yeah.
And, I try to earth myself. It's great that we're right by the ocean here, so I can earth myself first thing in the morning, get the sunlight first thing in the morning. What are the basics that people can do that would, like you said, give them, they invest 20% in to give them that 80% return in today's day and age to stay healthy?
So with all my patients, I take them through a detoxifying journey, I call it, right? And it is based on the Pareto principle. What's the 20% you can do now to detox 80% of your life? So we always start with air, water, and food, okay? So your air, where do you spend the most time? If you are in an area that's polluted, you live in a big city or you live close to a factory, etc., you're spending the most time sleeping in your bedroom and at work, usually in your office. Both those areas need to have an air purifier filter that works really, really well. So I mean, most of your hours you're in filtered air. If you are in a clean environment, then opening the windows in those areas is extremely important. Water. I tell people, drink water as much as possible from a reverse osmosis or a filtered source. So put those also in your work and your home environment, and always drink on a glass or metal containers that you're sure don't have any, toxins that can be leached out of those. And then finally, your food. Eliminate ultra-processed food and shop organic as much as you can. Okay, so now once you got those three things in place, you can feel pretty comfortable that you've done a pretty good job detoxifying a big part of your life. Now you start diving in on an individual basis to things like, what cosmetics are you using? There's a great app called Think Dirty that you can scan the barcode and find something better. Then you start looking at decreasing EMF, so unplugging your Wi-Fi at home, keeping your phone in a different room, etc. when you sleep at night. Remember, there's two parts of exposure to toxins. It is not just the toxins themselves, but it's the time amount that you're exposed to these toxins. So if if you're not going anywhere where you need to wear colognes and perfumes and makeups, don't wear it. That's more time you're spending away from these toxic exposures, right? And so this is kind of how we go through this journey of detoxifying their life. And it does take, I say, give yourself a year to really get this right and don't be so hard on yourself. You don't have to do everything today on day one. It's give yourself some time to get this plan into place, because it only takes a year, and then you have it in place for the next 50 years. Right?
Yeah.
So
that's exactly. I think that's right. You said the right thing there. Where don't get stressed out if you cannot do all these things. Because I'd wake up in the morning, I'm like, I got to get my sauna, I got to get my cardio, I got to get my red lights, I got to get my meditation, all these things. I thought, God, I'm getting stressed out trying to invest in my health, which is probably not doing my biological age any favors. So now I'm like, okay, well, if I can do the red light a few days a week, maybe the sauna a couple of times a week, and an ice bath, okay, that balances itself out. And just being a little bit more laid back and relaxed about it just makes yourself feel better about it. And you're probably going to have less inflammation because of it.
Exactly. One of the things that bothers a lot of my patients is they can't meditate. Like they don't have time to meditate, or they just can't get into a meditation that that day, and they get themselves so stressed out about it that they almost give up on going to the gym that day sometimes, or eating right that day. And I tell them, look, it's perfectly normal to not be able to meditate on a daily basis. Replace that with something else. What about 5 deep breaths? Do a breath work practice instead. That's something you have to breathe. You might as well do it in a practice form. And then you've replaced that one habit with something else. Same like if you can't make it to the gym that day, go for a walk. Do these little micro replacements so you don't feel so bad about yourself on a day-to-day basis, and you don't get stressed out about it too.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that's what happens. We get overwhelmed. And
we do.
Whenever I've done a seminar, I'll say to people as well, have you meditated? Everyone puts their hands up. Do you meditate? No one puts their hands up. Because it's difficult. It is hard. And you can't get stressed and frustrated about it.
Right.
If you hear noises outside, invite it in. Don't try to shut it out, because that's where the frustration comes.
Exactly. But I think it's also important to recognize that meditation, breath work does have a really significant brain health and longevity benefit. So I think people need to understand that so that they do add it into their world in one way or the other, and not just totally discount it as, I can't do it today, so I'm never going to do it kind of a thing.
Yeah, and some people try to invest into all the stuff that costs them a lot of money first, as opposed to the basics in the beginning, because it's free. If some people pay for something, they feel that they get more value out of it, as opposed to something free, they don't value it as much, but there's a lot of value there.
It's so funny you say that, because so many of my patients are like, just send me an Amazon list of everything they need to buy to have better longevity. Like, it's not an Amazon list, it's your habits, the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same with my clients. I'll say, I'm starting next week. Tell me what supplements I need to go out and purchase first. I'm like, no, we're just going to focus on your sleep and hydration first.
Right.
Then we'll talk about the supplements after.
Exactly.
If you're not even training to failure, then what's the point of taking a lot of these supplements?
Right, absolutely.
Anyway, thank you ever so much. Really been an
welcome.
absolute
This was
pleasure, my
fun.
friend.
This was a lot of fun.
This is a lot of fun. Everything that we've spoken about as well, we'll put in the show notes. We'll put all the links for you guys to find. Now, should people want to find you, Next Health, have any questions for you, where can they do so?
Yeah, you can go to my website, drshah, drshah.com, and you can fill out a form there, and I can answer your questions for you. And then I'm on Instagram at DarshanShahMD.
Okay, great. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well. Thank you ever so much. And we're going to watch you talk all about NAD at Brooke
time.
Burke's place. Yeah, okay,
Yes,
looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah.